My name is Savita. I come from a poor family. In my in-laws' house, we had a joint family, and all of us used to live together happily. My daughter loved her uncle, my brother-in-law, so much that she would only eat dinner from his hands. If I tried to feed her myself, she would start crying. Seeing the love between my daughter and her uncle made me very happy. But what surprised me was that whenever I brought up the topic of finding a match for my brother-in-law, my daughter would always find some excuse to reject the idea. One day, I decided to test something. I dressed in my brother-in-law's clothes and entered my daughter's room in the dark. I had been in her room for barely 5 minutes when she said something that completely shocked me. It felt as if the ground beneath my feet had disappeared. Parents are often unaware of what their children are doing, and sometimes, children indulge in things that their parents could never even imagine. My husband had passed away very early in life, leaving me with a beautiful daughter. My in-laws' family included my brother-in-law, who was younger than my husband. After my daughter, I could not have any more children, and my husband died 6 years after our marriage. My husband had 2 brothers. The younger one, my brother-in-law, always respected me like a mother since my husband's parents were no longer alive. After marriage, I had taken great care of my brother-in-law and treated him with love and respect. We used to live in a village where our neighbors often harassed us. Being poor, we didn't have the means to leave the area. As a widow, I faced a lot of societal criticism. One of my neighbors, Kamla, even accused me of having an affair with her husband. Because of my beauty, Kamla was envious of me and disliked me greatly. People in our village often praised my looks, which made Kamla even more bitter. She would find any excuse to tarnish my reputation. My daughter was very young at the time, and with my husband gone, I felt helpless. Kamla spread many false accusations about me, and the villagers began believing them, calling me characterless. Even my daughter's name got dragged into it, with people questioning her future character based on mine. The villagers proposed marrying me off to a poor man from the village, but I refused because my daughter was very young, and I didn't want to marry someone who wouldn't accept her. I was focused on raising my daughter. All these problems began after my husband's death. Kamla harassed me to the point where I felt utterly hopeless. I couldn't even consider marrying my brother-in-law because he was much younger than me. My brother-in-law was a kind and understanding person who respected me greatly. However, Kamla's false accusations had ruined my reputation in the village, making it impossible for me to live peacefully there. One day, Kamla went too far and spread rumors that I invited strange men into my home. When my brother-in-law found out, he said, "I trust you completely. We should leave this house and move elsewhere. Things have gotten out of hand, and we must think of Anaya too. She is a young girl, and I don't want her to grow up surrounded by slander and humiliation." Kamla's accusations had made our lives unbearable. My brother-in-law continued, "This house may be ours, but we cannot live here with dignity. The world is big, and we can find a place where we can live with respect, but staying here is no longer an option. You and Anaya are all I have left in this world. I love you both deeply, and I cannot see you suffer like this." Kamla had convinced the entire village that I was characterless. She even accused me of having improper intentions toward my young brother-in-law and claimed I had killed my own husband to pursue relationships with other men. I had married my husband out of love, and he had brought me to this village from the city after eloping with me. My beauty and my love marriage brought me nothing but disgrace and humiliation. I had thought that after getting married and moving to my husband's home, I would live a peaceful life. But little did I know that coming here would take away all my peace, and a woman like Kamla would play the role of a villain in my life. I fell into depression and became overly strict with my 4-year-old daughter. Now, my daughter is 20 years old, and my brother-in-law is 35. We left that village in the dark of night and moved to the city. My maternal home was already in the city. I was the youngest and most beloved daughter of my parents. My husband used to come to the city for work, and that's when we had an affair. I was educated and knew well that my parents would never let their educated daughter marry someone from a rural background. But I loved my husband so much that I didn't care about his lack of education. He made me so happy that I blindly left my parents' home to settle in the village with him. Since my husband's parents had passed away, and he only had a younger brother, there was no issue in my in-laws' house after our marriage. When I got married, my brother-in-law was only 5 years old. When we moved to the city, my brother-in-law rented a house, and I sold my jewelry, which my husband had given me, to sustain ourselves. Slowly, my brother-in-law found a good job in the city, and our situation started to improve. Now, my daughter has grown up. We live in a small rented house. My daughter is skilled in sewing and has opened a sewing center at home, while my brother-in-law works as a house painter. We are simple people, and after moving to the city, life has become comfortable. However, remembering the old days often affects my health, though I try to control my emotions. My brother-in-law supported me a lot and loved my daughter dearly. Since childhood, my daughter has only seen her uncle as a father figure. Seeing their bond used to fill my heart with immense joy. Over the years, we lived alone. After coming to the city, I didn't socialize much with neighbors and kept my daughter from going out unnecessarily. She only went out for college or important errands. Girls came to our home to learn sewing, and I always advised my daughter about the dangers of the world, warning her that love often leads to betrayal. My brother-in-law has always been very loving toward my daughter and looks youthful despite his age. Whenever I asked him to consider getting married, he would refuse, saying, "I will get Anaya married first and then think about myself." I used to tell him, "By then, you'll be too old." But he would reply, "I don't care about my age." I trusted my brother-in-law completely as he took great care of my daughter. He acted like a friend to her. Even though he was uneducated, after moving to the city, he used his earnings to educate my daughter. When she grew up, she also tutored him, and he eventually learned to read and write. Seeing their bond brought me great happiness. However, things started to get strange, leaving me both shocked and worried. My daughter, who always ate food fed by me, suddenly began insisting that she would only eat from her uncle's hand. I tried to reason with her, telling her that her uncle was asleep and had to wake up early for work, but she adamantly demanded that he feed her. Frustrated, I scolded her, saying, "Why are you behaving like a child?" My loud voice woke up my brother-in-law, Nandan, who came to Anaya's room. He asked why I was shouting. I told him, "She's insisting on eating only if you feed her." Hearing this, Nandan laughed and said, "It's not a big deal, I'll feed her." Anaya ate from his hand, and Nandan stayed in her room for nearly an hour. It was already 11 p.m. I remarked, "It took you a whole hour just to feed her? You wake up early in the morning. How will you manage if you stay up this late?" He replied, "We were just talking, and time flew by." I told him not to waste time like this and go to bed. I was puzzled by Anaya's sudden insistence on being fed by her uncle. This continued for several days, becoming a routine. But this wasn't just a one-time incident. It kept happening repeatedly. Anaya had started doing this every day now. She would only eat if her uncle fed her, and Nandan, using the excuse of feeding her, would stay in her room for 2 or 3 hours at a time. I thought perhaps the two of them were watching TV together and got so engrossed that they lost track of time. But one day, when I went to check, I found nothing of the sort. They were just sitting and talking. One day, it had been more than 2.5 hours, and I became furious. Who talks until 3 a.m. like this? When I tried to knock on the door, I was shocked to find it locked from the inside. I started banging on it loudly, and it took them 10 minutes to open the door. I asked, "Why was the door locked from the inside? I've been knocking for so long. Does it take this long to open the door? What were you two doing inside with the door locked? Is this any way to behave?" Nandan said, "Maybe the door got locked by mistake. We were watching TV, so we didn't hear the knocking." I replied, "You were watching TV at 3 a.m.? Is this the time to watch TV? And this isn't a fancy house with automatic locks that shut by themselves. This door doesn't lock itself." I told my brother-in-law to go to his room and sleep and warned him not to behave like this again. I also scolded my daughter. Anaya was about to finish her studies and was of marriageable age. I didn't want her getting into trouble, so I was eager to get her married as soon as possible. My own marriage had happened at a young age as well. I had contacted a matchmaker who brought a suitable proposal for my daughter and even brought the boy's mother along. The boy's mother met Anaya, asked her a few questions, and then I sent my daughter back to her room. My brother-in-law had gone to work, but somehow he came back home unexpectedly and immediately started misbehaving with the boy's family. He told them that Anaya wasn't a good girl and that the snacks served to them were store-bought, not homemade. He claimed that Anaya couldn't do anything properly and that she was an ill-mannered girl who fought with everyone. He even lied, saying, "Just a few days ago, she broke a teacher's head in college. Believe it or not, the police even came to our house, and we barely managed to settle the matter." The boy's mother was looking at him in shock and kept glancing at me as well. I was extremely distressed and wondering why Nandan was creating such a scene. He kept on speaking, even though none of what he said was true. Anaya had never done anything like that, not even misbehaved at school. I couldn't understand why Nandan was lying to them. Had he been drinking? The boy's mother finally said, "We don't want a relationship with such an ill-mannered girl," and left, saying many harsh things. After they left, I confronted Nandan and asked, "What on earth have you done?" He replied, "Did you see their faces? They didn't seem like decent people at all. I won't let my only niece marry into such a family. I didn't like the boy at all. Did you see how beautiful and young Anaya is? That boy seemed so much older than her. I didn't like him at all, so I said all that." I said, "Are you crazy? You could have at least talked to me first. Was there any need to create such a scene? You didn't insult them. You insulted your own niece in front of them. Now, if they talk badly about her elsewhere, we won't get any more proposals." Nandan said, "Nothing like that will happen. I just wanted to make sure such lowly people don't come back with another proposal. You were so impressed by their house and property, but you didn't notice that the boy looked lecherous, and his mother seemed cunning. I won't let Anaya marry into such a family." I was furious with Nandan's behavior, but there was nothing I could do now. There was no point in talking to those people again. Even if I tried to explain that my brother-in-law was joking, they wouldn't believe me. That evening, Nandan and Anaya were sitting in the courtyard, eating samosas and laughing heartily, while I was in a terrible mood. I couldn't understand what they were so happy about. One day, while I was cleaning Anaya's room, as she had gone to take her college exams, I noticed her phone had been left behind at home. I was cleaning her room when suddenly a call came on Anaya's phone. When I picked it up, one of her college friends was on the line. She asked, "Auntie, how is Anaya feeling now?" She had submitted an application at college, stating that she wasn't well and needed 2 days off. I told her, "Dear, Anaya has gone to college and hasn't submitted any application. She's perfectly fine." Her friend replied, "No, Auntie. The application even has your signature on it. Anaya told me that exams were going on in college and that she went there to take her exams." However, her friend revealed, "No, Auntie. There are no exams going on at college, and Anaya hasn't been attending for several days." I was deeply worried, wondering what my daughter was up to. She would leave home, saying she was going to college, but why wasn't she attending? I told her friend not to mention our conversation to Anaya and hung up. I placed Anaya's phone back where it was and waited for the evening. That evening, I called both Nandan and Anaya to the room. The atmosphere was tense, like a courtroom. I told Anaya about the call from her friend and asked, "What is all this? Where have you been going under the pretense of attending college? Your friend told me you haven't been going to college for almost 5 days, and that you submitted an application with my forged signature. How dare you lie to me and sign on my behalf? What are you up to?" Both Nandan and Anaya stood with their heads bowed, knowing they had been caught and had no explanation. I was furious. I said, "Tell me the truth about what you've been doing, or I will make sure you regret it. I know very well that my brother-in-law, Nandan, must have been involved in this." I told my daughter, "I will stop giving you money. Let's see how you manage your expenses then." At that moment, Anaya confessed, "Mom, I took a few days off and went to watch movies with my friends after getting Chacha's permission. We also went to the park together. I asked, "Don't you have Sundays for movies and outings?" Nandan intervened, saying, "I just felt like going to the movies, so I told Anaya to skip college and lie to you. Forgive me, it's my fault, not hers." I asked, "What on earth are you two doing? Why are you behaving like this?" He said, "I'm sorry. Please forgive me, and forgive Anaya too. It was all my idea to skip college and go out for fun." I found their behavior baffling. I didn't know what they were up to. At home, my brother-in-law and my daughter often engaged in odd behavior. They laughed and joked together excessively, and sometimes they'd sit and chat for hours. It seemed like the bond between them had grown unusually close. I began keeping a close eye on both of them. Meanwhile, I started looking for a suitable marriage proposal for Anaya. I told my brother-in-law, "If you find any flaws in the boy, tell me discreetly. Don't create a scene in front of everyone, as it would only tarnish Anaya's reputation and make it difficult for her to find another match." To my surprise, Nandan responded oddly, "Anaya doesn't need any proposals." I asked, "What do you mean? Why wouldn't she need proposals?" He quickly said, "Nothing, it just slipped out. There's nothing to it." I was extremely troubled by Nandan and Anaya's behavior and thoughts. I realized I had given them too much freedom. This time, I found a proposal for Anaya that was flawless. The boy was young, handsome, and from a wealthy family. His parents worked in a bank, and he matched Anaya's age perfectly. The boy's family was impressed by Anaya because she was very beautiful. When I looked at Nandan, I thought, this time, he can't find any fault. However, Nandan looked extremely upset. The boy's family said, "We really like your daughter and want to proceed with the engagement and marriage as soon as possible." I was overjoyed to hear this. Their eagerness and straightforwardness impressed me, but seeing Nandan's reaction left me wondering what was going on in his mind. They said, "Now that we have come to your home, you should visit ours once and gather all the information. After that, we can sit down and finalize everything, including the wedding date." One thing I really liked was that they immediately invited us to their home. I told them we would visit their place 2 days later. When they left, my brother-in-law said, "We will not proceed with this alliance." I looked at Nandan in surprise, as if he didn't want my daughter to get married at all. I asked, "Why not? What's wrong with this proposal? Such alliances are rare and only happen to the fortunate. I am ready to marry my daughter into this family. Be grateful that your niece's destiny is shining." I firmly stated, "I will get my daughter married into this family, and that too as soon as possible, before we lose this proposal. They are very wealthy, educated, and do not impose restrictions on their daughters-in-law." I was impressed that they suggested we bring our daughter along when we visit. The two of them could sit and talk, which is important as they will be spending their lives together. Such progressive behavior is rare, allowing the boy and girl to interact before marriage. I had already told both Nandan and my daughter that the marriage would take place in this family. They both remained silent, and I took their silence as agreement because silence usually implies consent. I started preparing to visit the boy's family. I picked out a nice suit for Anaya and prepared myself well. However, on the day we were supposed to visit, neither Nandan nor Anaya were at home. They had left, saying they were going to the market to buy gifts for the boy's family because it didn't seem proper to go empty-handed. But 2 to 3 hours passed, and they still hadn't returned. We were invited for lunch, and by then it was already 3 p.m., past lunchtime. If we were late, what would the boy's family think? It was a matter of our pride and reputation. I called Nandan, but he didn't answer. When he finally did, he said, "We're on our way, just stuck in traffic." A little later, he turned his phone off. Anaya's phone was also unreachable. I kept calling, but their phones remained switched off. By 4 p.m., I was very worried as there was no sign of them. The boy's family kept calling, asking why we hadn't arrived yet. I kept making excuses, saying we'd be there shortly. I felt deeply embarrassed in front of them. I even thought of going alone, but I worried that they would ask about my daughter and brother-in-law's absence. What would I say? By 6 p.m., I switched off my own phone because I couldn't face their questions anymore. Finally, at 8 p.m., both Nandan and Anaya entered the house, laughing. Their smiles faded when they saw me standing at the door. I said, "You've been gone for 8 hours. Were you buying gifts all this time?" My brother-in-law was about to respond, but I slapped him across the face and said, "What kind of nonsense is this? Where have you two been all this time? Do you realize how humiliated I was?" For the first time, I raised my hand on him because he was the one who took my daughter to the market. I said, "Do you know how much embarrassment you caused me?" Anaya stood silently while Nandan said, "Listen to me carefully. I don't want my niece's alliance in that family." I asked, "What is your problem?" "Everything is perfect. The family, the boy, his job. What's wrong now? What's the issue this time?" Nandan replied, "No matter how good the boy is, I don't want my niece to marry him. Anaya doesn't want to marry anyone, and that's final." Saying this, they both went inside and locked themselves in their rooms. My brother-in-law had never raised his voice at me or gone against my wishes before. What had happened to him today? I stayed awake all night, worried. I also noticed that Nandan had started spending entire nights in Anaya's room, which had never happened before. I couldn't figure out what was brewing between them. One day, I told Anaya to sleep in my room, as I wanted to clean hers. Once she went to my room, I put on a suit similar to hers and lay on her bed, pretending to be deeply asleep. About an hour after I left, Nandan also came into Anaya's room and in the dark came close to me and said, "What happened? Why did you go to sleep so early today? We have so much to do tonight." I was pretending to be asleep, but my face was covered and the room was dark, so my brother-in-law couldn't recognize me. He said, "Only 24 hours are left now, and then we won't have to be afraid of or hide from anyone. We will do whatever we want openly, and no one will be able to stop us. I'm so happy today. I can't tell you how lucky I feel. I never thought we could be this fortunate. I've even started dreaming about our future. You'll see, after marriage, our life will be so easy and beautiful." Hearing him talk about marriage, the ground slipped from beneath my feet. What was my brother-in-law saying? And that too about a niece who was like a daughter to him. He continued, "You've arranged your wedding attire, right? Don't throw a tantrum at the last moment about going shopping. I've already started shopping for myself." As soon as he said this, I suddenly got up, turned on the light, and slapped him across the face. I shouted, "What kind of disgusting things are you talking about? Who are you planning to marry, and whose wedding attire are you talking about? What is all this nonsense, Nandan? Tell me everything. I want to know the whole truth today." Hearing my loud voice, Anaya also came into the room and held my hand, saying, "Mom, don't hit Uncle. I'll tell you everything truthfully." I yelled at my daughter, "Yes, tell me. What do you want to say? And what are you trying to justify? I gave you both so much love, and this is how you repay me? Your uncle was the reason I found such a good match for you, and now he talks like this? You both disappear from home, and now here he is saying such things. What is going on?" I added, "I swear on my life, tell me everything right now, or I will take my own life." I was completely out of my senses, saying whatever came to my mind. But as Nandan and Anaya started telling me the truth, I was left utterly shocked. Nandan began, "I've fallen in love with a girl from our village, a village that caused you so much pain, filled with people you can't even bear to hear about in this house. And then, Kamala's young son, Sohan, fell in love with Anaya, and she wants to marry him. Is it just a coincidence, or something else that we both fell in love with people from the very place you despise? I met the headman's eldest daughter while I was painting a house in the village. As soon as I saw her, I fell in love. Over time, our love deepened. Meanwhile, Sohan met Anaya at her college, and their friendship also turned into love. We both fell in love with people from our village, people you hate. If we had told you earlier, you wouldn't have listened to us. So we decided to get married and kept discussing plans for hours about how to do it. I've been saving money for Anaya's and my weddings because we both know their families won't agree to our marriage. We four decided to elope and get married in court. Eventually, the truth would come out, and we hoped you would forgive us. We didn't want to hurt you, but we couldn't help falling in love. Kamala's son and the headman's daughter, they both love us truly. How could we ask for your approval? That's why I kept finding excuses to cancel Anaya's wedding proposals you were arranging. Anaya added, Mom, Uncle loves me so much. He's always supported me. Don't you want him to marry the girl of his choice? Don't you want us to live happily with the ones we love? Uncle and I didn't want you to find out about our wedding plans until it was done. That's why we made excuses and kept it hidden. We have more planning to do for tomorrow. Both of them folded their hands and begged for forgiveness, saying, We're sorry, Mom. Hearing this must have hurt you, but we're getting married tomorrow. Anaya began to say, Mom, you were the one who taught me that I don't have a father in this world, but God has given me uncles who are like friends and brothers. That's why we have always supported each other. We've chosen our life partners with each other's consent. The atmosphere in the village has completely changed now because it's been years since Kamla Auntie passed away. Everyone has improved. No one can say anything to you there anymore, because back then, people used to take advantage of your helplessness. But now, our situation has improved significantly, and no one dares to raise a finger at my mother anymore. Your daughter has become so strong that she can break the hands and legs of anyone who dares to disrespect any member of our family. Nandan added, Yes, Anaya is absolutely right. Kamla's son Sohan is a very good and educated man. He works here in the city, earns well, and leads a good life. Both his parents have passed away. Anaya won't lack anything there. His house is no longer small. He has expanded it with his earnings. As for the village head's daughter, she's around my age. After the village head passed away, her stepmother never arranged her marriage. That's why I want to marry her. She loves me a lot, and I'll make her the pride of our house. I know she'll make you happy too. Both of them kept speaking and crying. It was true that if they had told me the truth earlier, I would never have agreed and would have forbidden them from forming any ties with that village again. But perhaps it's true that what you resist the most often ends up happening. I had moved far away from that village, yet connections to it had rekindled because of their love for people from there. I held my head in my hands, unsure of what decision to make. Both of them fell at my feet, holding them, and pleaded, Please agree and be a part of our happiness. We can't be happy without them. If you want us to marry according to your wishes, we will, but we won't be happy. I placed my hands on their heads and said, Do you think I don't care about your happiness? It was for your sake that I left that village and came here. It was because of you two that I never remarried. I dedicated my entire life to you both. Can't I make this small sacrifice for your happiness? Fine. I'll go to the village to speak to Sohan and take a marriage proposal to the girl's house whom Nandan wants to marry. This wedding won't be a court marriage, but a proper one with respect. I will arrange your weddings myself. There's no need for a court marriage. They hugged me while crying, and I showered them with love. After all, my brother-in-law and my daughter were everything to me. I had sacrificed all my joys and love for them, so why couldn't I grant them this small wish? That village had once caused me great humiliation, but since everything seemed better now and the events were long in the past, I decided to let go of my resentment. I went to the village and took a proposal to the village head's daughter for my brother-in-law. On the other hand, Sohan, who had no parents but an unmarried sister, brought her to our home and asked for Anaya's hand in marriage. On the same day, I bid farewell to my daughter and brought my brother-in-law's bride home. Now, both of them are very happy and living peaceful lives. My happiness was always tied to my brother-in-law and my daughter, so I chose to let go of the past. My daughter is very happy in her marital home. Kamla's son is nothing like her. He is a good and sensible man. On the other hand, my new sister-in-law is also very kind. Friends, I hope you liked our story. If you did, please like the video. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and press the notification bell so that you get updates first.